Well, just just do it. I mean, if you're an aspiring marketer, you won't make a difference on your experience because you don't have a lot, right? So what you're bringing to the table is something different. It is your motivation, your other skills, and all of these and all of your soft skills, for instance, is super important. Like typically.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast today. And our guest speaker for today is Thibaut Briere. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Yeah, that's about it. Thibaut. Very
Thibaut.
complex writing, but simple spelling.
So he is a growth marketer and community builder, and he has his own company. He's the founder of a growth marketing studio, and we'll
Yeah.
be talking to him more about his journey so far, about his career, and what he plans to do. So,
Sure.
Thibaut, should we get to the questions?
Yeah, sure. So, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's
Um,
it's it's definitely exciting to be talking to you as a aspiring marketer myself.
okay. Yeah. You should do it. You should do it. It's the perfect time. Marketing has never been so exciting, I would say. It's not easy, but it's very exciting.
So, Thibaut, for starters, when and how did you first gain interest in growth and marketing, and especially B2B growth and marketing?
It's a pretty good question. I've quite frankly, B2B is just completely randomly. I just happened to, my first experience, my first job was in B2C. I started as a developer in B2C, and then in a startup. There were three people at the time, and it was in
Mm-hmm.
97. I think the word startup did not even exist, not in France, anyways. But yeah, and then the next job was in B2B. So I just
Mm-hmm.
and I liked it. I think there's specific challenges in B2B that I like. The length of the overall cycle is very interesting. The complexity of it as well, because you have multiple stakeholders. So usually you're going to have to map them out. You're going to have to take into account many different channels. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess it makes it more complex but more interesting as well. So that's why I just love B2B. And then uh, marketing. It's so I think I've been in coding etc. for about 7 8 years. And but I've always had customer facing roles. So even as a developer, I had I would be sent to Australia, Russia, etc. To train other developers. Um, and even though the conversations were technical, because I was there, all alone by myself, at a customer site, I would be really immersed into their business problems. And so I guess my engineer's brain was trying to understand, the problems, the issues that they had and their markets. And I really loved it. So yeah, it took me, really like 8 years to say, okay, now I want to move to marketing. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's also realizing my strength as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was just an okay developer, but yeah, one of my strengths was that precisely. I always think about, okay, why are we doing this? Whatever feature, whatever tech we're using right now, there has to be a very specific use case that a very specific problem that we're solving with this technology. And
Right.
I guess this mindset gave me a very specific approach to marketing. And when I moved to actual marketing roles,
Mm-hmm.
um, I found a lot of people who are doing marketing, just sitting in their office, doing slides all day long. And the first marketing planning process that I've been involved to was like 6 months old for something that's supposed to last a year. So like it doesn't make any sense. And that's where I thought, okay, there has to be a different way to go about marketing, and that's where growth comes into play. And because I was coming from
Right.
startups, the way, and this way, I spend a lot of time in corporates as well, but like where I belong and the way I like to work is really more, kind of startups. So trying to,
Mm-hmm.
work fast, making decisions without knowing, all of the parameters and the criteria. So I guess this is where I was interested to deep dive into the different ways to do marketing, and I took a lot of time trying to work on what the way startups were doing it, and I was working for corporates at the time, and yeah, and I started to apply that, and it was super fun, and yeah, so now I started a business here. In Singapore about a year ago, and yeah, we were doing that. It's super fun, super fun. It's just the beginning in Southeast Asia and in Asia overall. I think it's really, really just the beginning.
Right, because most startups come out of this area, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think overall, I work globally for I've always worked globally. So in North America, obviously, this is where I mean Silicon Valley. This is where all of this growth as a discipline has been
Mm-hmm.
defined and the whole theory has been built. But it's very Silicon Valley, right? And I don't have anything against that, but typically in Southeast Asia, uh, if I maybe oversimplify it a bit, but if you're Amazon and you're trying to expand in Southeast Asia, you will do this with a US mindset, right? Um,
Right.
And then if you go to the Philippines, for instance, or any other countries in Southeast Asia, the last mile delivery, for instance, is just completely different. You don't have roads, or it's just a dust track, and you finish
Mm-hmm.
with a bicycle or whatever. But and I think it's hard to understand that when you actually were born, like in the Silicon Valley, because all of what you've known is really very specific, but because everybody is sort of looking at the Silicon Valley as like, that's the way to go. This is the Bible. Um, we sort of miss this aspect sometimes, and I think in Southeast Asia is there's a big gap between all of these theories that have been built and all of these playbooks that we have from the Silicon Valley, which they're great and they're very foundational, but we have to sort of take them and really adapt them to Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a challenge. That's really the challenge that I'm up to. So
Yeah.
that's pretty fun.
Right. So moving on, if you could tell us the difference between growth marketing or marketing and community building, how is it different?
Um, well, marketing you're trying to sell, and community you're not trying to sell.
Oh,
If I have to summarize, I'm kind of oversimplifying this again a little bit, but um, marketing is about selling, and I think it's not as natural as it sounds, especially for many young marketers. I guess there's this whole, social media
mm-hmm.
um, sphere. It's easy because we all have, most of us has a social media account, right? And we do it for, individual reasons. But when you want to do this for a brand, you need to up your game and you need to be much more specific, much more, strategic about what you're doing.
Right.
So that's what I mean by, marketing. It is about generating revenue. You do social media, that's fine, right? You're posting videos on TikTok, great. How is this going to help you generate revenues for the companies? So revenue is
Right.
here now, it's here to generate revenues down the road. It has to be that. If it doesn't bring any revenue, if you're doing marketing without any clear way to generate revenue, it's called communications. So it's different. It's not, better or whatever, it's just different. Now, community, if you want to build a community, you must not sell to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, call it a user group or whatever. It's not a community. A community is a group of people that basically you put together in the room because they're basically your customers or your prospects. So you
Right.
are, as a brand, you are the only a common thing, common, place for these people to hang out. But the
Mm-hmm.
key is that if you leave the room, do these people want to still hang out together? Like if you just provide like a room and some catering, and then people are here, and do they talk to each other? Do they try to get to know each other?
Mm-hmm.
That's the community. I think it's super important for. It's a great test for brands. Um, if you try to create a community, if you try to be as close to your users as you can, it's a great test, because if that doesn't work, it means that there is a huge problem somewhere. Either your product is not interesting enough, or it doesn't solve a big enough problem for people to go through the pain of, come on, I just bought your product for $19.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean community? I just bought it. I'm not I'm not trying to become friends with you or with the other people who bought the same product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so community is something that's hard to do. It takes time. There's no shortcuts really. But when you try to build a community, if you're struggling, there is a big problem somewhere. Maybe your product is not good enough. Maybe you don't know how to talk about your product to your users. Maybe your users don't identify with your brand, so you have a branding problems. Whatever it is, you have a problem. So these are two very different things: marketing and community.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, basically, community. You just have to first give. You pay it forward. First, you try to help. You try to give as much value as you can. And then when you do your marketing, it's something separate. But yeah, I'm a huge believer of using communities and trying to build communities as one of the marketing tactic, if you will. And it's a
Right.
test for your offer to see if you're providing value, basically.
Lovely. Uh, so when was it exactly that you thought of starting your own venture that is Growth Marketing Studio?
Well, when we arrived, so we decided to move to Singapore with my wife. And when I arrived, so we arrived with nothing and no jobs, etc., no network. So we had to
Mm-hmm.
sort of, make our own mark, I would say. So I started by meeting a lot of people, and what we were looking for when we came to Singapore was really sort of this complete change in the environment, to sort of be energized by everything, like a completely different culture, the environment, the language, the market, everything. So I just met a lot of people, and my kind of my sphere is really startups, marketing,
Right.
innovation, tech. So I met a lot of people in this sphere, and so there's a lot of entrepreneurs, and yeah, I've heard consistently, we could use your help because there's a gap in marketing here in Southeast Asia, so we could use your help.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so after a while, after hearing that like 20, 30 times, like, okay, so maybe that's probably a good time. So that's really how I got started. I guess this is a very dynamic market.
Mm-hmm.
Being based in Singapore, and it's true all across Asia, the relationship with technology is very, very different from Europe or even the US. In
Right.
Europe, usually people think first about the danger and the problems of using technology. So privacy, cybersecurity, etc. All
Mm-hmm.
those are reasons to not use technology. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just that as a result, when you come to Asia, and I always remember when I was in the 7-Eleven in Singapore, and I saw this little girl. She was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, with the uniform, which we don't have in France. So I was like, "Oh, that's." It was completely new to me. And
Uh-huh.
7-Eleven, for those who don't know, the guys back in Europe, it's like the very small shop, convenience store. It's not like a big super modern store, right? So very the really the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this 7-year-old kid with an Apple Watch, and buying her snacks and paying with her Apple Watch. I was like, wow, okay, so and that's completely different in Europe. The contactless payments, having seeing a kid 7 years old using an Apple Watch to pay in a convenience store, like wow, that's you know so that's a great motivation, for me as well to build my business here because it's very fast, and yeah, it's just super exciting.
Yes, it definitely is. I'm sure it is. Uh, I read in your LinkedIn profile that you said many CEOs make marketing look like a very complicated process when in reality it actually isn't. So, if why do you say so?
Um, I think there's oh, I could go on, for hours on this one. No, but I think so. Marketing is complex, right? It is much more complex than it used to be because what I love about marketing is that you have today you have the creative part, and there's many more formats that you can use um, because of digital, right? Like 15, 20 years ago when you wanted marketing, you had like TV, radio, print, these sort of things, billboard. But it was somehow you had the banners, obviously, but it was just the beginning. It was pretty basic, and it was very hard to measure. Um,
Right,
right now, you have a whole range of creativity across all the channels. So TikTok, and the stories, and videos, etc., podcasts. So you have a whole range of things you can do. So it's much more creative. And I'm not even talking about AR, VR, etc. Right? Super creative. So that's great. Very, very data driven because you can measure so many things. So it's super exciting because you can now not completely prove an ROI, but you have a very, very decent idea of whatever revenue you've been making with every marketing initiative that you're
right.
launching. Um, and but all of these, and then you have the copywriting and all the behavioral sciences that are super, super important as well. There's a lot of tools that you have to know, so it makes the whole thing very complex, right? Um, but then there's, I guess, it's kind of a cognitive bias of all humans. When you don't master something, you try to pretend that you master it, and one way to do that is to you know, make it look even more complex than what it is. Whereas the real smartness, the real intelligence, is where you're really simplifying. And I think today the job, especially for startups, which is my target, but also for SMBs, it's super interesting what's happening right now with COVID because there's a lot of mostly SMBs are suffering from COVID, and especially
Mm-hmm.
in Singapore, the government is pushing real hard for them to leverage digital marketing to do business. But it's easier said than done, right? So the job is really to simplify. So I guess that's why I sort of want to move away. There's the CEOs who try to make it look more complex, especially agencies. Sorry if there's any agencies looking looking at this, but that's my belief, anyways. The job today in marketing is really to simplify it, and so you need to have a playbook of where to start, what are the different steps that you need to take, in which order, and yes, you can make it complex at some point, but it's also easy to start simple. It has never
Yep.
been that easy to start simple, if that makes sense, right? You take a like Mailchimp, you take a free version of HubSpot, or you have tools that are basically free to start with, and with that, you can start and have kind of a marketing machine that, if you know how to use it, can be very efficient. And then once you have that, you can try to dive into the complexity, but um, it is actually possible to start easy in digital marketing today, whereas it was
Right.
not before.
Mm-hmm. So, as you mentioned that because of COVID, the entire situation has changed. So, as a marketing person, do you think traditional marketing will matter anymore, or it will be all digital marketing?
I think it's all about traditional marketing. I mean, Maybe I say that because I'm old, right? But no, but I guess I studied again. I'm not your typical marketer because I'm an engineer. I was trained as an engineer first, and I started to do marketing before we all had smartphones in our pockets, etc. So when I first started to do marketing, I was like, okay, so what are the business problems we need to answer, right? What are the things we need to work on? What is the
Right.
what's the problem that we're trying to fix? And this mindset, to me, it's really about the mindset that you need to have as a marketeer. And so, as I said, kind of the first marketing planning process that I went through, it was in a way, it was, I was like, oh my God, left me really desperate. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, this is super important because this sort of work, you sort of need to dedicate the time to think about, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's the problem that we have as a company? And problems can be, so how does the brand perform, right? How does our messaging value prop look like? In terms of customers, are we, do we win customers? Do we lose market share, whatever? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of the pricing. So you sort of analyze all of these aspects to take a good picture of where you stand as a business. And you need to do that. And it involves the processes, the data, how do you track revenues, how do you track your initiatives, etc.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with sales, for instance, a big topic in marketing. You need to do all that, and then you try to think, okay, what is the biggest problems as part of this picture that I now have, and then what solutions can I bring to these problems. And to me, this is about marketing, and you can do the thought process, it is the same. Whereas you're in traditional marketing or digital marketing or whatever. Um, and again, yeah, I think I see a lot of um, I see a huge gap between what is being taught at school and universities for the students and young graduates, etc., and the reality. And it's very it's so easy today to just take your first job in a startup, and you end up posting some stuff on social media, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
really have any idea of what exactly you're trying to do, and what are the problems, in which order you need to tackle these problems to have an effect. So marketing planning is the foundations of everything. So to me, um, I mean, TikTok ads and TikTok as a platform, both organic and ads, by the way. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of question marks, but it's it's our job as marketers to say, okay, we have to be humble enough and agnostic enough that maybe that's a channel that we have to use, and the bare minimum is to
Right.
understand it, right? But
Right.
you have to place these TikTok as a channel into your overall strategy. If you
Mm-hmm.
have, I don't know, if you realize that you've been building a community, and the engagement in the community has been decreasing, and you have this community is important for you to do business, whatever that means, right? And if you want to retain your existing customers with this community, then you can try, okay, maybe TikTok videos can be one way to sort of rebuild this community in a different place,
Right.
right? But then you have this tactic, which is TikTok, or leveraging TikTok to sort of engage with your community even more in order to retain your existing customers. For instance, it's very simplistic examples, but I think that's the strength of marketers today.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the initiative that you're launching, you sort of have to have this traditional marketing mindset, which is foundations is what's your strategy, what is the business problems you're trying to solve, and how do you
Mm-hmm.
go about this. But then obviously try to leverage both offline and online channels, and there's more and more channels, and they're all saturated, right? So you need to move from one channel to the other one, because marketing is about differentiation, so you need to
Yep.
avoid saturation. So yeah, traditional marketing is here to stay. That's the foundation of it.
Lovely. So, you have had work experience with companies such as Nokia and Cisco. Uh, Please answer this only if you're comfortable. I understand you were not working in Nokia as a marketer, but
I was, yeah.
what 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 would you say about what is Nokia doing wrong in today's day and age? Why don't we hear their name as much?
Okay, well, that's a different way to ask the question. So I had a lot of fun at the corporates I was working for. There's some great things happening, and there's yeah, you have a lot of resources. So whenever you launch something, you can have a big impact. So that's great. But then just like every big MNCs, obviously you have some sort of a bureaucracy that comes in the way, and that prevents you to be as fast as you want, or as agile as you want. And in
Mm-hmm.
marketing today, timing is super important. Especially specifically COVID, you can't take 6 months to adjust your strategy in COVID, right?
Right.
You have like
Yeah.
1 week, 2 weeks, but you can, yeah, you can, if you're an MNC, maybe you can have 2 weeks before you realize that it's actually going to hit you pretty bad, and then 2 more weeks to really change and pivot your strategy. But you need to be fast, and MNCs, they will struggle to do that basically. Um, so that can, that's probably the biggest problem. And then I don't know. I mean, if you ask me about Nokia, I couldn't, can't really tell you. But yeah, I think it's that happens when you're dominating a market. I
Mm-hmm.
guess you rely as a company on one specific market, and then you just have you don't diversify anything. That's the basics, right? And then when this market
Right.
goes away, that's just gone, right? So yeah, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. We could talk about innovation, about many different things, but I guess it's a challenge. It's a challenge for companies to always keep be alert enough that whenever they start to dominate a market, they should be thinking, okay, what is the next thing, right? Not
Right.
how am I going to, milk this market as much as I can, but really where else can I look to sort of find my new pocket of growth that I can invest in now, so that in 5 years from now I will actually dominate this new market, and that's going to be the growth relay. And it's super hard because once you're an MNC, you have a lot of people who are a lot of processes, etc., that are here to um, support this one market that you have. So yeah, I guess that's what happened.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Also, last coming to our last few questions. What since you work majorly with startups, uh, what are some few tips you could give to startups out there to up their marketing game? Not just startups, but any business.
Um, well, it's super hard to answer that in just a few minutes, but I would say that you sort of need to look for. There's a moment. Don't do marketing too soon. That would be my advice. But if you're a startup, the first thing is to find an audience that is interesting by your ID. So audience and ID, this is where you start. Once you have that, you can start building a product, put it as fast as you can in the hands of this audience, have them pay for it. These are your first customers. So in you know the job at a startup is really to have the first sales as fast as you can, and then have more
Right.
sales, and build the product as you go. And that's probably going to take you like 2 years to do that. If you start to do marketing too early, it's just gonna mess up the whole thing because you won't be able to hire the right profiles, and there will be no strategy, etc. So it's gonna be, loss of focus. So don't start marketing too early. And it's easier said than done because founders like, yeah, just the logo, so many conversations about logo branding and logo. It's like, as a startup you don't have a brand, and that's a chance. So spend 4 hours on your brand, so logo, the key message, etc. That's your visuals, your identity. But spend 4 hours on that and then move on. But don't invest in marketing too early. And then once you want to invest, um, try to think about what machine you can build, um, that can be automated as much as you can. I think it's super important. And then, you need to have a team that is pretty. I would really recommend to hire T-shaped marketers. This sort of T-shaped mentality. Do you know this one? No?
No.
Yeah. So it's basically when you have like one or a couple of areas of expertise, and that's the vertical bar of the T. And then you also have knowledge on the surface of many different areas, right? So I
Right.
don't know, you're an expert in I don't know, data analytics and conversion rate optimization, but you also know the basics of copywriting, behavioral sciences, and user experience, etc. That's kind of the T-shaped mentality. You sort of need this sort of profile in startups because there's a lot of things you're going to have to do as the new hires in a marketing team for startups. They will have to do everything on their own. So you must have these sort of profiles so that they can sort of start on working on ads copy and creatives and in the morning, and then set up the campaign in Google Ads or Facebook Ads, whatever, and then the next day start analyzing the data. So you sort of need to have very multi-skilled people in the first place, and yeah, building this automated infrastructure. So using automation tools like Zapier and all these things. I think it's super important so that you are very efficient at what you do, um, and it's a great way to sort of build your first processes, your key processes around that. So how do you capture the emails? How do you maintain your database of email? Clean
Right.
enough and very well segmented. How do you produce content? All of these, there's a lot of automation that you can do, and this is super super important, and that is going to save you a lot of time down the road.
Lovely. And on the other hand, what would you like to say to aspiring marketers?
Well, just just do it. I mean, if you're an aspiring marketer, you won't make a difference on your experience because you don't have a lot, right? Um, so what you're bringing to the table is something different. It is your motivation, your other skills, and all of these and all of your soft skills, for instance, is super super important. Like typically in what I call the marketing tiger mindset. It's very different, but you need to be very data driven. You need to be very collaborative as well. So never work alone. Always try to, even if you write copy and you are kind of the copywriter in the company, always have somebody else checking your copywriting. Always collaborate so that somebody can have your back and vice versa. Together you're smarter. That's just the reality. So being very collaborative, having the mentality of a doer, this is super super important. Just do things, right? In startups especially, um, you need to do things every week, right? You need to think like a developer who ship new features every week. As a marketer, that's what you have to do. You ship new projects, new campaigns, you launch new projects, new ideas, you test new acquisition channels, whatever that is. But you need to think, okay, by every morning is like, okay, what will I ship during this week that we can learn from, right? Okay, we tested this channel, it doesn't work, or yeah, it's promising, or but yeah, shipping things, and by that I mean creating something that you can put in the hands or in front of the eyes of real users, real people, and then learn from. Um, so this is super important. And as a young marketeer, I would really encourage you to build something, like build your portfolio. You can do this very simply. It can be setting up a blog, writing regularly on Medium, or launching your newsletter on Substack, building your page on Notion. All of these are free, right? So you're not going to pay for it. And it's a great way for you to uh, first start building your own audience, and second, be noticed, right? And you will be remembered as somebody who is a doer, who has projects. And the nature of the subject of the project can be whatever you want. If you're a foodie, you can, launch a newsletter about food, or launch a podcast on, hip hop or whatever that is, right? But at least launching a project and um, thinking about this project as a marketing project. So, create content, distribute the content through your newsletter, emails, whatever that is, measuring, plugging I don't know, your blog onto Google Analytics to analyze the data. It's a great playground as marketeers, and this is how you're going to stand out, and this is how you're going to learn. So do things. You need to do things and ship things. Make sense?
That's great. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for all those tips. And before we end the session for today, if you could share with our listeners about how they can get in touch with you and know more about your work.
Well, sure. So, well, you can go on my LinkedIn. We're gonna have the link right after that, the links to my LinkedIn profile, and but
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Thibaut Briere, Thibaut, and last name Briere, Briere. So LinkedIn, I use that a lot, so I'm pretty active. So feel free to do that and reach out to me this way. Otherwise, WhatsApp is fine. I will give you the number as well, and email. It is on my LinkedIn profile, I think. So um, again, if you're motivated, you will find a way to reach out to me, and I will give you that after the podcast anyway. So yeah, and
Yes.
by all means, I like when people reach out. If you have ideas, projects, whatever, if you need advice, I try to dedicate time every week to get in touch with new people. So by all means, do this.
Thank you so much, Thibaut, for joining us and sharing your tips and experiences with us. It's been really great. Yesterday, I also came across the Marketing Tigers free workshop that you're holding,
Yeah,
and I registered. So I'm looking forward to that. And
excellent, excellent.
for
Yeah,
anybody who's
good,
listening,
yeah,
please go ahead.
yeah. So just one final word. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. My God. Yeah, I have decided to help 500 young marketeers, aspire marketers, by the end of July. So I'm hosting this series of webinars, 2 hours webinars, where I just try to give as much as I can over the course of 2 hours. It's usually fun, kind of intense, but yeah, I try to weed out all of the bad stuff and keep only the best, and try to provide some super actionable and um, no bullshit advice. So yeah, join the marketing webinars, and I will add the link to the package so that you guys can join later.
Most definitely. Again, thank you so much, Thibaut, for joining us and giving us your time.
No worries. Thank you so much, Angela. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.